discuss the developmental differences, the different developmental pathways that we take as little boys or little girls, because it's going to point to something that I often see in women who are in same-sex relationships. So in the beginning of life, every little boy and every little girl is first primally attached to mother. And so this can begin to even happen in the womb. We've discovered that bonding and attachment can actually start forming in the womb. But once a child is birthed, mother is the first significant love object for both a little boy and a little girl. And actually, in some ways, this arrow should be coming from mother down to little boy, from mother down to little girl. Because in a way, it is the parent's responsibility to establish secure attachment with the child. A little baby does not have the cognition or the capacities to know how to initiate an attachment with mother. Mother is the one who gazes at baby, who holds baby, who feeds baby, who looks into the eyes of baby, who touches baby, and hopefully it's in a safe, tender, caring way, so that baby begins to form this sense that I am joined with another. And in fact, the early stages of life, early weeks of life, the baby's sense, as much as we can know, is that I am one with mother. There is this sense of symbiosis, that we are one. So what begins to happen, though, is as baby grows and develops, and especially as we discovered when the baby is a toddler or 2 or 3 years old, the baby has this sense of there is this big world out there, and I want to now not just stay connected with mother constantly. I want to move away from mother and start exploring the world. For a baby to do that in a healthy way, they need to know that mother is still going to be there for them. Mother is not going to disappear. Mother is not going to turn into a totally different person. She is still the same mother, and as the baby goes out and explores, the baby can kind of come running back to mother. But what also begins to happen at about 1.5 years is the baby recognizes that there is this other person in their life. And when they are held by this other person, it is not soft. It's scratchy. When they touch the face, it's scratchy and prickly, and they're laying against something that's hard and yet strong. And this person tends to want to throw them up into the air and play funny games with them. And so baby begins to realize, oh, there's another person who is very important in my life. I know their voice, and their voice is low, where mother's voice is up here, but there's this low voice person. And fathers play an equally important and significant place in terms of allowing a child to healthily develop and to become very content and secure in their personhood and in their gender identity. So here's what begins to happen at a fairly young age, is that for a boy to develop healthily, for a boy to develop a sense that he is boy, that it is good to be boy, that he is enough, that he is adequate, that a boy needs to begin to differentiate from mother, or begin to notice that mother is female and I am not female. I am male, so I am different than mother. So this sense of psychological differentiation or psychological separation. Because the boy will begin to realize, I am not mother, I am not like mother, I don't belong in the world of mother or the world of females. And what begins to happen then is boy starts noticing dad or father and says, I am more like father. And we hope, again, ideally, that dad is a good man. He is a gentle man. He has a sense of his own masculinity. He enjoys being a man. He has found contentment in his manhood. He feels adequate. He's not struggling with a deep inferiority. And he knows that men have such beautiful authority and power to bless others, or to even call others into life, to really give that word of blessing and affirmation. And so the boy admires dad. The boy admires who his dad is. And we're hoping that a boy begins to want to be more and more like his dad. So for healthy development, a boy begins to move out of the world of mother into the world of men, or into the masculine. And by looking into the eyes of father, as father looks at him and blesses him and lets him know what a good thing it is to be a man, that the boy begins to learn about himself, begins to recognize aspects in him that match dad, that look like dad, or maybe look like some other men in his life. And so the boy begins to develop this very secure sense of his gender, of his masculinity. So what we find with a lot of men who struggle with same-sex attraction is that often these steps did not happen. So in other words, one story is that a boy was very, very close to mother, and in fact, mother relied on the son. The mother needed the son in some ways, and in fact, in some cases, the son almost becomes like a surrogate spouse for the mother. This can happen when dad is gone a lot, or dad is not emotionally present to his wife. So her needs are not being met, and she really likes her son, and so she begins to depend on her son. She begins to use her son to meet some of her own needs. We've already heard this. This can happen with girls too, okay? It can happen with daughters, but it can happen with sons. And what happens is that the boy almost becomes trapped. He's engulfed by mother. He becomes very lost in this world of mother and the world of females. Maybe he has all sisters. He has no brothers. Maybe dad is gone a lot, so dad is not around to spend time with him or to affirm him. And so the boy never makes it past just being connected with mom. He doesn't know how to move into the world of dad. He doesn't know how to relate to dad, especially if dad hasn't initiated some good conversations or good time together. The boy has no idea what the world of dad even looks like. And so he can become very, in some ways, very arrested developmentally, and instead of growing up believing that he is this strong masculine being, he feels very inferior. He feels very insecure as a male, very unsure of himself with most other boys. And you will see this often in young boys, maybe by the age of 8 or 9, where the other boys are all over here playing in a group, and the girls are sitting over here, and this little boy is sitting with the girls. He does not feel brave or sure of himself enough to go with the boys. He doesn't know how to play the games that the boys have played because he has always been with mother or his sisters, doing things that often females do. And so he is so insecure that he only sits with the girls. So often we find that these guys with this deep gender insecurity will later struggle with same-sex attraction, because they're still longing to be in the world of men. They're still needing to be in the world of men, and they're still needing to apprehend their own masculine identity and own masculine self. So, similar thing can happen with the girls. Is often this initial attachment or bond with mom does not get fully established with a little girl. And she does not sense this warm, safe, deep attachment and connection with mother. And I've already said several times, sometimes mom can be too busy, sometimes mom is depressed, sometimes mom is just frustrated in general with life. And the little girl begins to feel pushed away. Actually, I never said really what the healthy development is for the little girl. It's best if the little girl is very warmly attached to mom, and then dad comes into her life and brings another added blessing of attachment. So the little girl has this sense of rest and settledness in her close attachment with mother, and then this other wonderful caregiver comes in, blesses her as a girl, tells her how good it is to be a girl, and so she's just receiving more and more relationships. But what can go wrong with a girl's development is, first, sometimes this initial attachment is not established. So her home, or her home base, foundation, really for being, is not in place. And if dad is not around, or not available, or if dad is possibly angry and a mean man, then this is not safe. To have dad enter into her world is not something that she wants. She may have to protect herself or defend against that type of involvement. And so in some ways, it potentially can leave the little girl with no attachment, no safe place. And without that basic sense of attachment, the formation of self cannot happen in any human being. And so this is what I believe we are working with and seeing in women with same-sex attraction, not all of them, but many of them, is that we're seeing a deep, deep, primal need for a secure, warm, safe attachment. And primarily with mother, even though this attachment is also important. So now what I want to shift to is talking about emotional dependency. Because I believe that within what has been described as emotional dependency, we begin to see the depth of a woman's need for this type of security, for this type of primal attachment. Okay, so what I want to do is define emotional dependency, unpack what emotional dependency is, and then we'll talk a little bit about what do we do? How do we help women who do experience deep emotional dependency? So first we're going to talk about codependency. And codependency is different than emotional dependency, but it will help us to understand the definitions so that we can really contrast the two. So codependency has to do with a person who lets another person's behavior affect him or her. In other words, a person becomes so impacted by how another person behaves that they are very strongly motivated to try to control the other person's behavior. So this term emerged in work with alcoholics. And we discovered that spouses of alcoholics often develop these type of symptoms, where let's say the husband of a wife who is alcoholic is so deeply negatively affected by the woman's drinking habits and patterns that he will go about trying to control every moment of her life so that she doesn't drink. He's trying to, make sure she doesn't drink, which of course doesn't work well, because then the wife is feeling this pressure. She's feeling these negative emotions, and she's needing relief. And what she has found is that alcohol gives her a sense of relief, and so she just goes to the alcohol, and it's this vicious cycle, right? For those of you who work with codependency, you know. So why would a person be codependent? There are many reasons. One is to stop the negative effect of another person's behavior. But if you push deeper, you will also see often people who are codependent need to be needed. They need to be wanted. And so this role of trying to control another person's behavior becomes their identity. And there is a payoff. There is this sense of, I'm important, I'm needed, I'm wanted, because I'm helping this other person. I'm helping this other person. And this is a very good book, Codependent No More, if you want to read more about that. So, what does it look like? It is obsessive caretaking, which means caretaking is not the same as caregiving. Caregiving, where I am giving care to another person. Caretaking is literally trying to run the other person's life. So it's obsessive caretaking. In other words, there's not good boundaries. There are not good boundaries in the relationship. When a person wants to take care of another person, and if I'm obsessed with taking care of Wagner, let's say, I am spending all of my energy, all of my time thinking about how I can take care of her and make sure she doesn't drink, and I'm controlling everything that I can and maybe manipulating everything. And guess what's happening to my inner world? I'm completely abandoning myself at some level. I am fully consumed with trying to help another person live, and I am becoming emptier and emptier and emptier. So caretaking is indeed an abandonment of self, and it leads to very unhealthy relationships, very unhealthy intimacy. Okay, now let's look at emotional dependency, because there is some overlap. Emotional dependency occurs when the ongoing presence and nurturing of another person is believed to be necessary for my personal security. In other words, if you leave me, if you are not constantly present with me and constantly giving me the nurturing I need, I cannot survive. I cannot live. I won't exist. So the nurturing might come in many forms. It may be a belief that I need your attentiveness or I'm not going to survive. I need you to listen to me or I'm not going to survive. I need your admiration. I need you to love me. I need your affirmation. I need to spend time with you. I need you, I need you, I need you. Or I will not survive. So, see, a little different than codependent. Codependent, I'm trying to control their behavior so that I feel better, but now I'm needing you. I need your time, I need your attention, I need your care to make me feel better. Because on my own, I do not feel good. So here's another definition, and this takes it even a step deeper. And it says that emotional dependency is actually a state of being. It's a state in which a woman feels totally reliant on another woman or person for safety and functioning. In other words, the woman does not even believe she can function without this sense of deep connection to this other person. And we can be emotionally dependent on the same sex, and we can be emotionally dependent on the opposite sex. But for women with same-sex attraction, we're going to be talking about woman to woman, right? Okay? So it's when a woman believes that she cannot even function without this other woman's presence and ongoing attention and engagement. So when a woman is emotionally dependent, she feels as though she literally cannot exist without the object of her dependency. In other words, she cannot exist without this other woman. This is how deeply she needs this woman. It becomes a very desperate, dependent relationship. So to understand this a little bit more, let's just talk about dependency in general. I believe that we are created as dependent beings. We are dependent on God. He is our Father. He is our Creator. We are His children. He is big. We are small. He is holy God, holy other. We are created creatures. We're creatures. We're beings. We are not God. We are like Him, but we are not God. We are dependent. We're dependent on Him. And we also come to realize that we are dependent on one another, that we need the church community to continue to be healthy. And so dependency by itself is a healthy construct. It's part of our humanity. To be dependent, I am dependent at times on my friends. I already know that I'm securely attached. I already know that I'm loved. I already know myself. I know what my strengths and weaknesses are. But there are times when my resources are not enough. And I need some extra support from my friends. And I trust my friends. And so I know that I can depend on them to help me with some extra resources. Now, I'm not depending on them for my very life. I'm not depending on them for my existence, but I'm depending on them to help me, to come alongside me. And when they need help, they can depend on me. And I can come alongside them and give them some extra support and give them some extra resources. And so in a healthy relationship, we have this mutuality. We can both kind of depend on each other. But there's no loss of self. I don't forget who I am. There's no abandonment of self. I'm not giving myself away. I'm just offering some help to my friends. So dependency by itself is a healthy construct. But let's look at the definition of attachment. Because what we see is in emotionally dependent relationships, we start getting the feeling that this is not just mature adult friendship where there's this mutuality of helping each other. We begin to get a sense that this is more similar to an attachment between a baby and mother. So let's look at the definition for attachment. It is a state of being, state of emotional connection, where the presence of the object or mother becomes related to the sense of well-being, security, and need of the baby. So let's think about this for a minute. Because when you're a baby, you are completely dependent on mother or father for your very existence. If you did not have mother or father or some caregiver who stepped in, you would die. It's that simple. Babies are completely dependent within their attachment to mother and father. And this is healthy when you're a baby. This is how it should be. Because it's as a baby is completely dependent that mother and father are coming and meeting the needs of the baby. This is what allows the baby to grow and develop, is that the baby is somehow open, receiving all that mother and father are giving. And this is what grows up the baby, so that the baby someday can be a healthy and whole and strong adult, and now be able to have babies themselves, or people to care for, where they can pour in, especially young, little people, where they can pour in and help another human being grow and develop. So this type of state of being, of complete dependency, is very normal when you're a baby. When you are an adult and you are securely attached already as an adult, and your dependency needs have already been met, we don't tend to be driven by dependency. We're not living in a way to, oh, I need you to survive. I need you for my well-being. I need you for my very meaning in life. We don't need that. We're already whole, we already have ourselves, and we know how to love. So stepping back and looking at this emotionally dependent cycle that is very common in female-to-female relationships, we have to ask, what is this pointing to? Because it truly looks like a woman is almost regressing into this infant state of dependency, into this infant place of need. So there's another writer who has also observed this, not necessarily in lesbian relationships, but she's seen it in heterosexual and homosexual relationships. And she's decided that it's enough of an issue in human relationships that it needs to be addressed. So she has called this obsessive dependent relationship that literally feels like if you don't meet my needs, I will not exist. I will not be able to survive. She has called it a love addiction. And because she sees actually an addictive cycle in this, that I am obsessing, similar to how an alcoholic will obsess about getting that drink of alcohol that will leave them feeling you're gaining this sense of well-being, and finally I can relax or let go of some negative emotions. And yet then afterwards they may feel guilty because they're trying to stop drinking. So they'll feel guilty and they'll feel bad, and the negative feelings emerge, the pressures of life emerge again, and they're on the brink of this dependency, or this dependent neediness, and they begin to fantasize about drinking. They fantasize about the wine bottle, and pretty soon they're working through this ritual, and pretty soon they're drinking again. They're drinking, and now they have this sense of well-being, and so the cycle goes, right? This author believes that's exactly what's happening in relationships, is that we have no way of gaining our own sense of well-being apart from this other person. And so we begin to feel lonely, we begin to feel empty, we begin to feel the pressures of life, and because I'm in this place of dependency, I believe that the only way that I can gain a sense, again, of well-being or a sense of security is if you would spend time with me, if you would look at me, if you would give me attention, if you would give me affirmation, then I'll know I'm okay. Then I know I'm okay, and now I can go on to the next day, but there is probably a bit of shame at times, because I think a woman says, I'm so not okay. There's something wrong with me that I just can't be okay by myself. I'm an adult woman. I'm an intelligent adult woman. Why am I not okay? Why do I have to keep going back to my girlfriend to tell me I'm okay? Now, I know the women I work with ask this deep inside, and yet they have no answer. They don't know. All they know is that if they can just be with their girlfriend again and receive her attention and be close to her, and this is not about sex, okay? It really doesn't have anything to do with sex. It's this closeness. If I can just be with her again, I'll feel better about myself. And so the cycle continues. It continues. So let's talk about the characteristics of an emotionally dependent relationship. Because if you are going to be coaching or walking alongside or counseling a woman with same-sex attraction, it's very possible that you will be helping her to understand an emotionally dependent relationship. That this is what's really happening in her draw to another woman. It's not so much just, oh, I'm sexually attracted to this other woman. What's happening often, unconsciously, is that this other woman somehow symbolizes mother, or somehow symbolizes that she can meet all of these needs, all of the needs for well-being and for purpose and meaning. And that's, you know, we as human beings, we so symbolize things in life. And I don't understand how that all works in the brain, except that I just know that women will often have a very powerful draw to another female. Unconsciously hoping that this female will somehow fill them up so that they can finally feel okay with themselves. But the problem is the other woman is wanting and trying to do the same thing. And so we have often two women who do not feel okay in and of themselves. They feel empty. They need a sense of purpose and well-being, but they can't figure out how to get this on their own. They still have these unmet dependency needs. So they meet each other, and often, sometimes all it takes is 5 minutes. 5 minutes of talking and laughing together. They can look into each other's eyes and they can see themselves. They see this. It's like they see somebody who looks like them at some level. Somebody who has had deep pain in life, or somebody who has had deep difficulty, or somebody who is also insecure in her femininity. And they're very much alike. And they see this similarity, which looks like mutuality and connection, and they're so excited that they've met another woman who is like them and who may understand them. And sure enough, they do. They do understand each other. They speak the same language. And within 1 hour or 2 hours, and this is kind of meant to be a joke, but it is also true, that they are now planning the rest of their life together because they have finally found home, what feels like you are who I've been needing, you are like me, and maybe you can, you know, fill me up. And of course the other woman is thinking the same thing. You can fill me up. And so we have the empty places of these two women mirroring each other that feels really good when we meet somebody who's like us, right? It just feels good, whether it's healthy or not, it still feels really good. And with the hopes and the desperate need all being funneled now into this relationship. So the relationship is not so much connection or the draw, the attraction between the two women, is not so much about who the other woman is, as much as the connection itself, the relationship itself. It feels powerful. It feels like connection. It feels like this is where my security could finally be, because I can attach to this other woman and be connected to her, and therefore I will not have to live alone, empty, desperate, for well-being and purpose and meaning. So sometimes the relationships can form very, very fast. Very fast. And not always. Not always. Sometimes girls are friends and they're just best friends for several years. Then their relationship begins to be slowly more and more dependent, more and more exclusive, where they're not hanging out with other friends, but they're doing everything together all the time. And this is what I saw in those two women that I opened with, talked about at my church. I had noticed that these two women were spending so much time together. They were talking on the phone all the time, or they were actually getting together all the time. And I was worrying about the woman's family, the one who had children. I was worrying because I thought, oh, I mean, I can see that they're really good friends, but this seems imbalanced. It seems really imbalanced. And I had no suspicion whatsoever that they were lesbian. That never crossed my mind. We're talking 27 years ago, never even thought about it. So I was surprised when they shared, but it certainly gave me a picture of what, in some ways, the heart of a female-to-female relationship often is based on this over-enmeshment, exaggerated closeness, possibly because of these deep dependency needs. So again, it's the attachment or the connection itself that is needed and desired. And what becomes sad about this is that many women will be drawn to this other woman because she wants the connection, she wants the attachment, and she thinks she feels like she's falling in love with this other woman, but she doesn't even know the other woman. They've only known each other for 5 hours. And as time goes on, they may decide that they don't really like each other. And yet they've already established this dependency. And they believe that they can't survive without each other. And yet they are not getting along really well. And this can be very, very difficult in relationships, but I've learned that often there's not a good foundation of building a healthy friendship is based on the uniqueness of each individual, right? And often in dependent relationships is we are not even noticing who the other person is. It's their attention that we want. We want their connection with us. We want their affirmation. Often in emotionally dependent relationships, a woman will literally get to a point where she wants constant connection with her girlfriend. And this can become very, very difficult because it's hard for her to maintain her job. It's hard for her to stay focused on things because she's constantly feeling this need to call her friend, to chat with her friend, to text her friend, and it can be extremely excessive. And like I said, often the relationship eventually moves into exclusivity, and both of the women are failing to stay connected to other people, to other friendships. And so their entire life begins to revolve around each other. Often the emotional dependent relationships can be overly caretaking. You will see codependency in the midst often of an emotionally dependent relationship. So we've got two dynamics going. The emotional dependency, or the need for this attention and connection with another woman, but also an obsessive need to caretake and to make sure that other woman is okay, because I need her to be okay so that she can give me attention and so that I will feel okay. So very vicious cycle. So in the end, if a relationship is deeply emotionally dependent, it's typically not, we have a tendency to look at it and say, oh, these two women are so in love, or they're just so, they're too close, they're just too intimate. And in reality, this is not about intimacy. This is not healthy intimacy. Emotional dependency is about getting some dependency needs met. And in reality, it's really an obstacle to healthy intimacy. Healthy intimacy respects and honors the individuality and separateness of each person. So in other words, in healthy intimacy, we have times where we come together and we are close and we are sharing our hearts, and then we run out of the time and we have to separate. And we go our own ways, and we have other relationships, and we have responsibilities, and we have jobs to do. And then we get some more time that we can come together, and we're close, and we're intimate, and we're sharing, and then we must come apart as adults, as mature adults, and we have other responsibilities. Okay, so healthy intimacy is a coming together and a separating, and it's a rhythm. It's a healthy rhythm of together and separate. But what happens in emotional dependency? It's a constant drive towards closeness, 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 closeness. So this is actually blocking the rhythm of healthy relationship. And it's also blocking to the degree that I'm depending on another person to make me feel okay, or to give me a sense of my identity, or to give me a sense of well-being, means that I am not doing my own inner work. I need to be looking inside of myself and facing my emptiness. I need to be understanding who I am specially and uniquely made. I need to be finding relationships where there's a give and share that's healthy and healthy boundaries. But when I'm emotionally dependent, I am literally, again, losing a sense of who I am because all I care about is whether this woman gives me the attention that I so long for. So it becomes, when any person is emotionally dependent in a relationship, it becomes very, very sad in terms of where they're losing a sense of who they are. And women will even describe, you know, Janelle, I got to the point where I had no idea who I was. If my partner liked scrambled eggs, I liked scrambled eggs. If my next partner liked sunny side up eggs, I liked sunny side up legs. I became whoever my partner wanted me to be. I was desperate to maintain that connection. So much of the therapy that I do with women is to begin to help them look at themselves and to understand who they are and to regain a sense of what do they like, what do they want, what are their passions, what are their desires, what are their talents, what are their abilities. Because if they've been in an emotionally dependent relationship, chances are they have forgotten or they never knew. Okay, so now let's pretend that two women have been in an emotionally dependent relationship for about a year. And neither of them keep up with other friends. They spend most of their time together. They travel together. Sometimes they may even work together. But all of their focus is on one another because, again, they want reassurance that this woman is still going to be connected to them. It's not necessarily because they are just madly in love with this other woman. They might be. They might have genuine feelings of love. But it's more because they just want to make sure this relationship is secure. But what can happen is, let's say I am really going through a phase of being needy, and I am also really feeling insecure. And I'm thinking that my friend isn't spending quite as much time with me as she used to. And in fact, she keeps talking about this new person at work. And I begin to get very concerned that my friend may actually be backing away from me. She may be distancing herself. And so that begins to create a lot of concern inside of me. And I am, of course, very jealous. I don't want my friend spending time with anybody else. So I become possessive. And I start finding out when she leaves work. And I start timing her on how long it takes her to get from work back to our house. Because I'm worried that she may be seeing somebody else or visiting with somebody else, and so I start timing her. I start becoming very possessive, very controlling. of her. And now my girlfriend is saying, whoa, you're beginning to suffocate me. I need to have a life here. I need to breathe a little bit. And so my girlfriend starts pushing me away. Well, now that's the very thing I'm afraid of. And so I begin to cling more desperately. More desperately, I start reaching out to her, and I may accuse her of not loving me anymore, and I may accuse her of not being faithful and that she doesn't care. And then she, of course, is defending herself and saying, you're coming on way too strong, and I need some space. And now the relationship becomes very hostile. It can become very hostile. It can become even violent, because each woman literally feels like they're fighting for their own survival. One woman is fighting because she feels like if her girlfriend leaves her, that she is literally going to die. So she's fighting for her existence. And the other woman feels if she doesn't get some space from this other woman for a little bit, she's going to be consumed and swallowed alive. And so we have this push and pull, and often both women will be clinging desperately because they don't want to lose the attachment, and yet at the same time pushing the other one back because there's not room enough to breathe. So very, very difficult relationship, and in fact, it can be very, very dramatic. If you're working with a woman who is still in an emotionally dependent relationship, there will be a lot of drama that she will bring into the counseling office every week, because it's very, very difficult to end an emotionally dependent relationship. So I want you to hear that. When women come to us and confess that they are in same-sex relationships, of course our tendency is to want to tell them it's wrong, it's sin, you shouldn't be in this relationship, and we want to ask them to please stop the relationship. But this is literally close to impossible for many women. And it's not because they want to still have sex with their friend. It has nothing to do with having sex with their friend. It has to do with this connection that is giving them a sense of being attached to mother. They are in a state of dependency. They have regressed. They have emotions of a very little girl who says, if I am separated from this woman, I will not survive. I will die. And so these relationships, even when the women want to end these relationships because they can't do it anymore, it's making them crazy. Even when they want to end them, they are very, very hard to end. Many of my clients will attempt to end a relationship, or at least begin to set boundaries in a relationship over and over and over. And they have every intention in the world to eventually exit their lesbian relationship. But what happens is, as soon as they communicate to their girlfriend, I want to set boundaries. I no longer, for instance, I no longer want to have any physical contact with you. And eventually, I think I should move out. I think we should live separately. And so she feels strong, she feels good about this decision, but she's telling her friend, and her friend literally crumbles and falls apart and says, screaming, I can't live without you, and becomes suicidal. And that's not because the woman is putting on a show, it's because she is literally desperately fearing that she will die, and so she is fighting off literally thoughts of death. And so then the woman who was strong and had set boundaries now is so concerned about her friend. She's worried that her friend might commit suicide. And so she holds her friend and reassures her friend that she's here for her, and now they're back again. And so it's a series of many, 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 many attempts to begin to set boundaries in this relationship, to redefine the relationship, and in some cases, to actually end permanently the relationship. So I have learned as a counselor that there is not going to be any quick solution to changing an emotionally dependent relationship when my clients are in one. And I am patient with them, and we move very, very slowly. And this becomes very difficult for pastors and spiritual leaders, because of course there's moral issues involved. Of course there are, and yet the women are doing the best they can, and to require that two women just end their relationship is literally like ripping apart. It's like ripping off an arm, literally, is what it feels like psychologically. That they're going to rip off my arm and say, okay, now be happy. It's just, it is not a psychological possibility. So women need the help and support to begin to slowly create distance in their relationship, to slowly begin to separate in different ways, and in the process build more friendships, see a counselor, work on coming into what needs to be healed inside of them, beginning to look down at themselves instead of always the other woman. It's a slow process. But now, maybe it will make more sense as to why I do the kind of therapy that I do. Because what I'm really wanting to have happen is that my client will begin to transfer some of this dependency, some of this deep need for a secure attachment. I want her to transfer that onto me. I want to become that object that she can trust in, that she can rely on, that she can even be dependent on in an unhealthy way. Because she's at a state of being, of needing some primal dependency needs met. So she can become fully dependent on me, and in our very warm, attuned, empathy-based relationship, some of these needs can actually be met because we are not sexualizing. We are not, she is not being violated. And she doesn't get all of me. She only gets 1 hour once a week. And she has to learn that she can live without my constant attention. But it's hard. This is painful work for women. Because a lot of women will feel as if they do need to talk to me every day. They need to be sure that I'm still there for them, because they're entering into this panic and insecurity that what if Janelle leaves me? What if she decides to not be my counselor anymore? So this anxiety is real, and it goes very, very deep. And so I will often provide special things to help her when she's really feeling this. And I may leave a message on her voicemail that she can listen to over and over again. That I am here for you, and you are doing such good work. It'll be kind of affirming, but just reassuring her that I'm here. I am here for her, and we are going to see each other soon. Or I may give her a little object that she can look at, and it reminds her of me, that I am still there, even though she can't see me. Sometimes I will increase my appointments with her, where I'll say, yes, I think we do need to meet more often, because she's in such a place of fear and panic that I'm going to leave her. Or that she may be in a place of fear and panic because she is exiting this same-sex relationship, and she just needs my presence to make up for what she's losing with her girlfriend. So it becomes very, very emotional work and powerful work, but that's exactly what we want is that a woman, instead of being emotionally dependent in a very unsafe way with another woman who has the same needs, that she can feel these dependency feelings, and we can talk about what it's like within a professional, safe, boundaried relationship, so that she can grow, she can begin to develop, she can fill out and find ways to attain a sense of security in her own personhood and in God, and her sense of meaning and purpose, where she isn't required to do this through another person, another woman.